You're welcome back. This Newsfile is your most authoritative news analysis show, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. Just a couple of comments and then we'll continue with the matter of the Ghana-US military pact. And Daniel in Accra says that you guys are underrating Koku's statements. Go back to 2008 and listen to what he said on Radio Gold during the second and third rounds of the elections. He called on NDC party people to storm the offices of the EC with cutlasses and other weapons. He played war songs the whole day to incite his people. Remember, he's a son of an ex-general. If you're a son of an ex-general, it means what? We cannot tell his intentions from the construct of his face alone. That's from Daniel. And then David says that tell Samuel Okudjeto Ablakwa that the Let My Vote Counts men and women who got terribly wounded and maimed also deserve his compassion.
And okay. They have it. They have it. and they have always had it.
And David is a convener of the Let My Vote Count.
Yeah, he's my good friend.
Right.
He knows he has my compassion.
Okay, thank you. Now,
all
right. So, as we already know now, the demonstration and the press event that was to herald the demonstration that led to the arrest of Koku was actually the thing that happened the next day after he was arrested. And what was it about? It was about the Ghana-US Defense Pact, which had been ratified by Parliament, us in the majority, doing that act alone. So I start with Inusa Fuseni on this. Parliament has already ratified the deal. The demonstrators, of course, are led by the NDC, because we are told parties are coming together, and the NDC was in the majority. Of course, the NDC has a majority of all these parties that were coming together. And you can understand why Koku was leading some of these things, because of the NDC's, size. They say that they will continue these demonstrations until the government listens. Listens to what? It's been ratified. So what's going on?
Well, thank you so very much. Indeed, this agreement, that is the agreement between the United States government and the government of the Republic of Ghana on defense cooperation, the status of United States forces, and access to and use of agreed facilities and areas in the Republic of Ghana ought not to be executed by the president. It should not be. It's a bad agreement. It's not in the interest of this country. Now, let me state it for the record, and I'm prepared to argue and debate this agreement with the Minister for Defense, and if you can arrange it, for me to demonstrate conclusively that this agreement is establishing a base in Ghana. You might choose, like Humpty Dumpty, the minister can call it use any word or any name for this agreement. And intends that it means that. But what inference, reasonable inference, will you draw from the 19 articles of the agreement?
Please show us, because he says that he has assurances from the US that it's not a military base.
That is why I'm saying
and
that.
And in any case, that is not in the agreement.
Like Humpty Dumpty, if you have assurances, that doesn't take away the reasonable inference.
Show us, because
first of all,
that's the bone of contention.
Now, let me tell you why, and our leader, the minority leader, captured succinctly why we oppose this agreement. Yeah. We are not opposing a security and defense cooperation agreement with the United States. Yeah. But this agreement, in the form it is, doesn't serve our national interest, and that's what we are opposing. It ought to be put on record. Now, we are opposing it on 4 or so grounds. The constitutionality of the agreement. And I will demonstrate to you why this cannot be an agreement that should be ratified. 2, the legality of that agreement. 3, the ethical and moral issues raised in this agreement. On those 4 grounds. 1, constitutionally, this agreement came to Parliament pursuant to Article 75 of the Constitution. If you have a student of constitutional law, you would have read in Mudbury and Madison the power of the executive to enter into treaties. For the treaty to be a legal document, that treaty will be executed by the executive. For it to have binding authority on the state, that treaty has to be ratified in Parliament. So you have procedure, you have motions that you have to go through. This treaty or agreement has not been executed by the president. And the defense minister says so in 4 places in his memo to Parliament. And the last, I'll just read one of those places. It says that, and that is paragraph 5. I will start with paragraph 1, but let me start with paragraph 5. No, the first time he refers to this agreement, it says that renewal, and that is paragraph 2, the introduction, that renewal of commitment is outlined in the instant draft agreement. Parliament will, the power of Parliament to ratify an agreement is not to ratify a draft agreement. It's to ratify an executed agreement.
What's the meaning of an executed agreement?
Execution in law, to say that an agreement has been executed, means that it has now gotten a legal force between the parties, but cannot be binding on the state until it is so ratified by Parliament. It becomes part of the laws of the state. Now, the second time he refers to this agreement is paragraph 5. It says that all the ministers, and the draft agreement was variously reviewed by the Attorney General, blah, 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 blah. And they made input into the draft agreement in order to ensure that it reflected the true interests of the country. Draft agreement. The third time is that in paragraph 6, on the 7th and 8th of August, to ensure fair terms for both parties in the draft agreement. So he, by the memo that he sends to Parliament, that he has brought to Parliament, he has mentioned on not less than 5 times. The last time is that Parliament is hereby requested to consider and ratify the instant draft agreement. And I say categorically and without any fear of contradiction that the power of Parliament to ratify an agreement is invoked when that agreement, treaty, or convention has been executed.
Meaning there ought to have been signatures.
It ought to have been signed by the parties.
It wasn't signed.
Not, it says so.
Sure.
So clearly says so. So on the basis of
but as we speak now, you know that this has become a matter for the Supreme Court. Broja Jemfi of the NDC and one other gentleman by name Emmanuel Kotin, I think in separate suits, have gone to the Supreme Court saying that because of the non-signing or execution of this before it got to Parliament, it is null and void, and the Supreme Court must declare so. Yes.
Then, when you talk about, look at paragraph 9. Paragraph 9 seeks to establish a duality of legal regimes in this country.
Paragraph
duality.
Paragraph 9 of what?
Of the draft agreement,
yes,
which has been ratified.
Please read it.
Establishes a dual regimes.
Please read it.
Dual legal regimes. The United States forces may conclude contracts for the acquisition of goods and services, including construction in Ghana, in accordance with the United States laws and regulations. In Ghana, in accordance with United States laws and the United, okay. Then it says again, acquisition of goods and services in Ghana by or on behalf of the United States forces shall not be subject to taxes, custom duties, or similar charges imposed by Ghana or its instrumentalities or any subdivision thereof.
That's not different from what you have in the previous agreements. That's
the duality
signed to.
The duality.
The tax waivers.
The tax, it's a tax waiver. So the president ought to have certified that, look, or executed this agreement, and so that it comes to Parliament for us to consider whether or not to grant them tax waivers.
Tell us what you mean by the duality of...
The duality simply means that that's why I want to establish there's a base here. And look at the United States forces, and I've counted as many as 6 areas where you can possibly infer that you are looking at bases.
You are inferring.
Yeah, yes, infer. Okay. Yes, it's an inference.
Okay.
The first time you are inferring that this is a base, it says that, and you start from military status of military personnel and civilian personnel in this country.
Article 2.
Article 2. That's the diplomatic status. That's the diplomatic status. That is definition. The United States forces mean the forces of the United States Department of Defense, hereinafter known as DOD, including its constituent organizations, and all its property, equipment, that is military accoutrement, material, and its military personnel and civilian personnel present within the territory of Ghana in connection with this agreement. That's the first time you get an impression that it's a definition. So you are looking to isolate and identify a classified group of people within the territory. And that is identifying them for different treatments. Now, the second time that you can infer that there's an agreement, it says that
there's a base.
There's a base. That Ghana hereby provides an unimpeded access to and use of agreed facilities and areas to the United States forces, United States contractors, and others as mutually agreed. Unimpeded access. Such agreed facilities and areas and portions thereof provided by Ghana shall be designated as either for exclusive use. What is that meant to be? Yeah. What is that meant to be? That means that will be their base. Yeah. Or if it is for the joint use of the United States forces of Ghana, then so they have set up 2 regimes. Areas that will be for the exclusive use of the United States forces, and if some areas are defined for the joint use of the Ghana and United States, what will follow? If the area is designated as the exclusive territorial area or for exclusive use of the United States, then Ghana government's responsibility to provide security will be limited to providing security within the outer perimeter of the area. You know what that means? It means that we cannot go into that area.
Why would you want to go into the area if you had agreed and ceded the area to them?
Yes, so if we can't go into that area, it's out of bounds. That's the normal thing that people say, out of bounds to Ghana. And it is only bases that are for the exclusive use that is out of bounds to the indigenes of the area. Now, if the area is for the joint use, then Ghana maintains security within and without. That's significant. You ought to know that. Now, thirdly, the United States forces are hereby authorized to control entry. So, the most ludicrous part is that they will even, as United States forces, provide agreement 2. And I'm reading for emphasis sake. This agreement sets forth the framework for enhanced partnership and security cooperation between the parties with the aim of strengthening their defense relationship further and addressing shared security challenges in the region, including, for emphasis, including those relating to protection of government personnel and facilities. So it won't be long. You will see that if Ghana and the United States so agree, you will find the United States military providing personnel, protection for government personnel. So the bodyguard, you can find them. And then also taking guard at Flagstaff House and other areas. It's here in the agreement. Yeah. It's in the agreement. And then to get you understand.
But you say this makes the arrangement a military base.
No.
That's the argument you are making. You have finished there.
I'm not finished there. There are so many because I'm trying to. That's why I'm saying that we could sit down and argue out all the agreements, including tax waivers, including the fact that
new.
Oh, they're not new. Yes, I'm not saying they're new. But I'm saying that reading the agreement as a whole, clearly, and I've seen other agreements, clearly, including even bringing equipment and non-licensing, permitting us to license those equipment, including not allowing us to inspect those equipment when they arrive. They're all in the agreement. But I'm saying that I have counted not less than 5 areas in this agreement.
So
what
is the fear? What is the fear? If you can do that in a summary quickly, in a minute, what is the fear? What is it? If granted it's a base, what? So what?
The first fear is that why did the president not execute the agreement before he came to parliament?
Yeah. We have dealt with that already.
No. That's not a fear. That's a constitutional breach.
Yeah.
That's a constitutional breach. What is the fear? We're not dealing with apprehension.
Yeah.
Okay? Why didn't the president execute it? You don't see that the president is shifting responsibility for the agreement to parliament? Why would the president shift responsibility? Don't you think that the president himself has an inherent...
If it is a base, granted, what is the fear? What's the problem?
The fear is that it compromises our... And I've read Professor Bafo Ajimandua's article in the Graphic of Thursday. It compromises our security.
Not our sovereignty.
But if it compromises our security, it could compromise our sovereignty.
Because that's the lead, focus of the demonstration.
Okay, so it compromises our sovereignty.
We have sort of sold our sovereignty.
We've sold our sovereignty. I mean, they can come into this country with impunity. With the sailors identification card, like now with the military identification card, and they are roaming. They can be in their military guard in this country. They can drive their vehicles. When they bring their vehicles, they don't need to license them in accordance with the license number plates of this country. They drive them the way they are. Okay, so if you want, you could say that Ghana, by signing this agreement, is constituting the country into a satellite state of the United States of America.
Interesting.
Yes.
A satellite state of the United States of America. Yeah. Okay, I think Harry Redusu made that argument, and in Parliament, and therefore President Akufo-Addo will be head of a federation.
Not a federation.
No,
a county.
State. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so we're going to hear from Kweku. He's going to do the 2 documents or the two older ones, 2 older ones and the new, to suggest that what Inus Afuseni is suggesting is clearly misleading and it's not founded. But the question that is being asked by most people is that the Minister for Defense says he got these assurances that it is not a base. Why is the assurance not in the agreement itself? It's a big question.
No, but lastly, let me, because I'm going.
Yes, you are taking leave of us.
Mustafa Ahmed, the Minister for Information, says we are bringing the 1998 agreement
for ratification. The 98 and 2015. Yes.
Yes. In this memo that the Newsfile signed, on 4 different occasions, he indicated that the 2015
are based on this.
No.
Lapsed.
Okay.
Expired.
Yeah.
He said it. Nobody forced him to say it.
Yeah.
In the memo he brought to Parliament. You don't bring a lapsed agreement to Parliament for ratification. There's no ex post facto ratification of a lapsed agreement. Parliament doesn't have that power.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And then you can add Article 19.3 of the current agreement, which says that this agreement supersedes all other agreements.
Okay. That's a germane point. And thank you very much, Honorable Yunus Afuseni. He's taking leave of us. He has very urgent matters to get to attend to. Now, let's hear Abdul Malik Kubako. He says, clearly, this is a base. And the government says this is not, but that is wrong.
I'm not politically naive. I've been around for a very long time. So I know. See, if the agreement was to establish a U.S. military base in Ghana, I will be opposed to it. Yeah. If it was to establish a military base in Ghana, I will be opposed to it. I've read agreements, all the three, and I don't see or smell the establishment of a US-based military base in Ghana.
Demonstrate again to us, like you did the other time, counter to what he had just done. Because it's a compelling argument
there has always been a US military presence here. I'd read extension between having a US military base and a US military presence. We've had it here all the time. They may vary in terms of the size and the ins and outs and exercises and things they come to do here. But a base is a different ball game. And if you allow me, the point about lapsed, which is true in terms of if you read
the memorandum,
the 2015 agreement, entry into force and termination. Let's read that. This agreement, which consists of a preamble, articles 1 to so and so, annexes 8 through to K, shall enter into force upon the date of its signature. The agreement shall remain in force unless terminated by the mutual written consent of the parties or by either party giving not less than 180 days notice in writing to the other party of its intent to terminate. Did you get me? I'm asking, has anybody seen any evidence of any of the parties having written to this effect? This agreement, 2015. A memo.
But the defense minister told Parliament.
You are not getting me.
No, it's okay. The defense minister's point is noted.
And I noted that. I said it's there. It's maybe in elegant way of putting a matter. I am saying when you are going to law, we are talking law. This is the agreement. Entry into force and termination. You must see evidence of either party having written, and they give themselves is a 180 days. I said there is none of that, anything like
this
that.
Agreement, they did not have a duration. No, so that the termination would have come in only within the period of duration.
It doesn't.
But
this
Article
agreement,
19.3 of the current agreement terminates this.
I said,
you don't need to terminate because of Article 19.3.
You are not getting it. You are not getting my drift. After this has been ratified, I consider this agreement moot, redundant. Yes. But that's not my argument.
Fantastic.
Please, you were using the memo.
Yes. And where Article 19.
No.
I've always used both.
Please. You were using the memo where, after all, the ratification, the memo came before the ratification.
That's right.
Yes, so please, let's put it in the right context. So you were talking of this had expired or had lapsed. Yeah. I'm saying that on record, if you are looking at it from the purely legal point of view, this, if you don't see evidence of the two parties having initiated some moves to terminate it, it had not terminated before the ratification. And indeed, in the Hansard, the day you had walked out, surprisingly, and I'm being very frank with you, the defense minister, in his submission to the House, did say that this agreement had not lapsed, which contradicts what is in the memo. Yeah, but the Hansard, which is the final day of the ratification, and I have a copy here, says that he was categorical that this agreement had not lapsed. Right. That's for record. But I'm saying that, you see, it is not what the defense minister says or you say or the memo says. If you go to the Supreme Court and it's been determined, they will look at this article and see whether indeed anybody triggered the requirement for the termination.
So as you say, the only point we can say that the termination was triggered is the new agreement, 2018.
I will go for that. Right. Obviously, it makes sense, logical. So now let's go. I said the base is a myth. And from 2003 to 2008, they said we had a base. We all know it didn't happen. They have started it again. It's not going to happen. Tax waivers, ID cards. Please, they are all in the 1998 thing. It didn't take away our security. It didn't take away our sovereignty. So I don't get it. When the minority first issued their statement, Have you read that statement? It was as if they didn't know of the 1998 agreement because they were outraged by the tax exemptions, the duties, and all those things. But if they had had the sight of 98, I'm not sure they would have gone in that drift. So it was obvious they didn't know. Now, see, let's go to the 2015 agreement. Logistics support, supplies and services. In terms of exactitude, I have always said 2015, 98, and 2018 are not the same in terms of exactitude, but they are links in the same chain. And at US, I have correspondence from here, from the United States Embassy to Ghana government, that for them, in their opinion, all those agreements were subsisting, existing agreements. That's how they were proceeding with their correspondence and everything. Now listen to the logistics support, supplies and services. Food, water, billeting, transportation, including airlift, petroleum, oils, lubricants, clothing, communication services. What is that? We bought Vodafone units, MTN units for them to use, or what?
It's not the
no,
spectrum.
I'm saying,
It's not radio
you see,
spectrum.
you see, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. When the Americans are here and all over this period, and they're doing their communication, do you know how they go about it? With their gadgets? Do you know how they go about it? They rely on our communication networks as well. They can do it without it. They have the capability, satellites and all that, to do without it. But because you've come in an agreement, they do it, communicate, and it goes through our system. I've also checked. Now, listen to this. Ammunition, base operation support, and construction incident to base operation support. What does that mean? It's not military base, but there are bases in Ghana that they use. Construction incident. They may occur a situation where they have to do some reconfiguring. So construction comes in and they use their own contractors. They have civilian contractors attached to their military industrial complexes and the embassies and things. So what were they doing? Storage services, facilities that we had agreed with them that, look, you can keep your things in storage A or B. So we had given them facilities. This agreement, 2015, we had already. And then use of facilities. Which are they? You see, sometimes these things, I think last time I saw the defense minister showing you Annex A. Which
of the specific areas.
Yes, it's attached to the agreement, but it's not all over the place, which I think makes sense to me. But whatever it is, use of facilities, where the U.S. ghost or military personnel. You see, let's be fair to ourselves. You have put this in an agreement. You expected that who were those using these facilities? U.S. military personnel and their civilian counterparts. They were not ghosts. They were here. See, this letter. This is a letter dated 12 February 2015. It is signed by Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Hananyaku. I'm sure you've seen it. If you don't mind, I'll read it. It's important. It says, please find attached a copy of a diplomatic note, number so and so, dated 5th February 2015, by which the United States Embassy informs about a proposal to use Ghana as a base for a proposed military operation for the protection of U.S. citizens and facilities in the region, in the sub-region. The note recalls that government agreed to the use of Ghana's territory and airspace for the operations at a meeting between His Excellency President Mahama and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Ms. Bisa Williams on 4th September 2014 at the Flagstaff House. According to the note, the operations will involve the deployment of approximately 200 U.S. Marine Forces Africa's personnel, 4 MV-22 Austria, and 2 C-130 Hercules aircraft. The deployment was scheduled to begin on 10 February 2015 and last approximately 5 weeks if approved. Accordingly, the following is being sought: clearance for U.S. aircraft to conduct overflights within Ghana's airspace for the duration of the mission, permission for the 6 U.S. aircraft to operate from and be staged on the Air Force ramp, and for the deploying forces to live and operate out of the U.S. Expeditionary Reception Facility located at the Air Force Base at the Burma camp. They had what you call U.S. Expeditionary Reception Facility located on the Air Force Base at Burma camp. Indeed, the truth is that it's the same thing there, that thing on Annex A. They had always had access to it. It is not U.S. ghosts that are there, it's their personnel. Okay? So, our friends, my view is that, look, I'm not worried about those who don't belong to the NDC or have never been in government before, and the masses out there who have been agitated into a certain frenzy. I'm not worried about them. They will take time to educate, inform, and redirect. But I'm worried about those who were in government, who these things didn't go to parliament, they didn't keep them also on file, they didn't even put them in their handing over notes. See, this is how big the Ministry of Information, Foreign Affairs handing over notice. I've gone through it. I can't find a hint of the 2015 agreement there.
No, but Kweku, is it not instructive that some of these things, and because the matter has become a matter of public discussion, and even the revelations we are making, including the 2012 one that you referred to, is it 2012 or
2015?
Yes, 2015 you referred to, yeah. And we mentioned the people who signed them, and the fact that the US was to be stationed here and do some activity against Boko Haram and all of that.
I'm
when
so
we
sad.
do these things,
I am so sad. I have to be honest.
Is it good? Is it healthy for the security of this country?
Not at all. And it's a disincentive for other countries to enter into future agreements with us. It's we are talkatives. We talk too much. Okro maps all over the place. I am very sad doing what I'm doing.
So is it not to be expected that you may not find some of these things in the document that you are talking about, the handing over? That these are confidential matters.
No, it should have been there. See, it should have been the Ministry of Defense handing over. It should have been in National Security. They hardly do handing over. They do it sometimes in a different way. But it should be here. The only thing I saw here that I've seen close to the correspondence, and you see, at Supreme Court, there'll be a lot of correspondence that will come to bear. If you are checking on a law,
okay.
Please let me finish. On how a law was made, for instance, if this Constitution, you know, you go back to the Consultative Assembly and examine a lot of their memos and proceedings. There are a lot of things happening. Let me just finish up. I realize you are pushing me. You know, this point about Article 9, which Husseini read. It says, United States may conclude contracts for acquisition of goods and services, including construction in Ghana in accordance with United States laws and regulations. United States forces may acquire goods and services in Ghana from any source. And he says that's his duality of something.
Yes.
I'm surprised at that. And this they argued, Ghana government, US government, the negotiators, they all sat and argued. This is a letter, and again, you see, you cautioned me, but what choice? Do I have a choice? This is February 27, 2018. It's a letter from the US ambassador to Dominic Nitiwu. This area became a bone of contention. This is the US stand. Apparently, government eventually agreed. It says, concerning Article 9, Department of Defense contracting officers must follow US law in their soliciting, awarding, and administering contracts. This is a global system, and we cannot make an exception. Ghana government was apparently asking, do it in the procurement law here, which doesn't make sense. It says, however, this does not mean that we are not respectful of Ghanaian law and regulations. We are. While the Department of Defense contracting officers must follow the US law, which is what this clause addresses, United States forces may conclude contracts, The Department of Defense practice is to incorporate the higher of local or US requirements into the contracts. Contractors are bound by the terms of the contracts.
Okay.
All the Article 15, they are all here. Okay? All this will be available to those who are challenging the constitutionality or otherwise of the agreement.
Okay, Koku, thank you. But Dr. Kofu Andapoy, I want you to very briefly look. Inusa has taken a lot of time, okay, to state the case for the minority. Koku has also taken some time. But Koku, you agree that when Inusa and Samuel say that the ratification of the previous agreements that we are being told by the information minister will happen is a non-starter, it's faulty.
I think it's
you agree that?
I think
because this agreement
it should be ignored.
Supersedes all of that
it should be ignored.
And terminates all of those.
I wonder where that came from.
Okay, thank you. Now, you see, the concerns that are coming up, are they not the reasons that the majority should have listened to the minority to take time and scrutinize this document and allow for debate? We are saying that it's a base, it's not a base. The minority may have forced a situation where in the agreement, you'd have put it in the agreement that it's not a base. So we know that clearly. Why?
Something, my senior Inusa mentioned that they don't have a problem with an agreement with the US. The problem they have is with the form of the agreement. Now, how significant in terms of difference is this form from the previous forms that they upheld their signatures to? Now, there were many impressions that were initially created by our brothers in the opposition to create the impression that this form is so weird. The first one had to do with the issue of the base. They said, I mean, this is a base. But you know, I schooled in the barracks, field engineers. When the US mentioned the base, just like you have 48 engineers, you have wives, children, soldiers, their families. That's where they are. That is the barracks. If you go to the US and tell a soldier that, I mean, I stay in field engineers barracks, he will ask you, pardon me or excuse me. It is not a terminology that is used over there. But when you're telling you stay at field engineers base, now you understand what you are talking about. So base in the US dictionary all over there refers to a military establishment where you have soldiers and their families and where they stay. It's a city or a town. That was the impression that was thrown out there in the beginning, that the US now are going to have a base in Ghana. And if that were to be true, what it means is that you get to somewhere like Pram Pram or a whole city, and it's a constructed place where you meet US soldiers, you see their wives and children, that's where they attend clinics, it's their town and city. And we made it clear that that was not it. And in fact, in the initial communique from the US Embassy, they said their soldiers were to have access to our base. They use the word base for hours. But when you talk to a Ghanaian soldier and tell him which base do you belong to, you might have to use the word barracks to get the term you are using. I just want to make it clear because in the US, you might say football. But in Ghana,
I'm saying with the benefit of hindsight, we have gone through all of this.
Okay.
Don't you think that it would have been the best to allow for some debate on all of this rather than rushing it at the last hour, the way you did?
It is so sad when you have an agreement being so bastardized, treated as so alien, when the very people leading that charge were the supervisors and managers of that agreement for close to 2 decades. You see, that is what is worrying in all this. If their issue is that let's look at ways of perfecting the agreement, making it meet some golden standards, I don't have a problem.
But that's what the point they're making.
No, but come on, listening to the opposition, they've told you from day one.
Okay. That we have run out of time. Let me give Sami just some 2 minutes, and I'll also say we also have a responsibility. Okay, and this is the responsibility I want to say, that the disclosure, some of them are not the best. Last week, for example, the minister was here. And the references to specific persons and Boko Haram, you could make them a target. So what's the point that still needs to be canvassed about this that you don't understand? It's not a base. You say you are inferring that it's a base.
It cannot be.
Significant fairness.
Our international relations is guided by Article 73 of the Constitution, which talks about the national interest of Ghana, that it must be supreme. First point. Second point. It is important, Samson, for all of us to recognize that
you need to summarize. You have 2 minutes.
We are not opposed to a military agreement with the United States of America. We've had several. What we are opposed to is an enhanced agreement which presents a permanent military presence in Ghana. And I'll go in a jiffy, something. I'll be pointing out the differences. That claim that the 2018 agreement is just an amalgam of previous agreement is false. It's not accurate. But before I do that, let me commend the Ghana First Patriotic Front and all of those who joined the demonstration, including the minority, all the political parties, the vice president, Kofi Totobi Kwache, former national security minister, who joined the demonstration. All of these experts, including President Rawlings, Ghana's longest-serving foreign minister, Dr. Obeda Samoa, who are all saying, including Professor Akila Akpasoya, who see the concerns that most Ghanaians see. Something. Paragraph 2, the preamble of the 2018 agreement, and it's just so sad that I don't have time. It says, desiring to conclude an agreement contributing to enhanced security cooperation between the parties.
It's correct.
Enhanced.
This is an enhancement.
Yes. So nobody should tell us that the 2018 agreement is the same as the 1998 and the 2050 agreement. Now, if you read the 1998 note verbal, there is a clause here. Such aircraft shall observe local air traffic control regulation while in Ghana.
I'm sorry, we have just run out of time.
You see,
obviously, what it is that
all the previous agreements are temporal agreements.
Since Samuel Okujeto and his group will continue, the demonstrations and protests, it is very obvious that we will need a specific period to deal with just this agreement.
That's right.
And to hear them how their arguments are solid, to the extent that they are going to demonstrate until the thing is reversed. My guests have been Abdul Malik Wekubako, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, Inus Afuseni, MP, Tamale Central and ranking member, Legal, Constitutional and Parliamentary Affairs, Dr. Okoboy is MP, Lejakuku, and member, Select Committee on Health. Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa is MP, North Tongue, and ranking member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. I'm Samson Ladia Yenimaya, as always, is by Latida. Have a good afternoon.